You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
Does the Force need to die, or can we save it? Guys, we are going to be talking today about my favorite game of all time, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. This is Systematic Geekology. We are the priest of the geeks. I'm your host for this evening, this morning, whenever you're listening to this, Christian Ashley. I am, of course, joined by the finest, the best, the most wonderful co-host of all time, TJ Blackwell. How you doing, TJ?
Oh, doing great. I've been asleep for most of the day, and I'm ready to do something productive.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. We are also joined by a special guest today, this being, of course, Adam Bear. Adam, would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, my name is Adam. I'm a fellow geek and nerd of all things of this and many subjects. So I'm really excited to be here and be talking with you guys.
Excellent. All right, as we always do with these episodes, we're going to start with asking what everyone's been geeking out on. So I leave that open to you guys to answer first.
Man, I've just started reading Akame ga Kill just because I heard that the ending is different than the anime. I also never watched the anime. It's pretty good so far.
I think it's a fine baby's first edgy anime for everyone. I don't particularly care for it, but I'm glad other people do.
Yeah.
Adam, what about you?
I recently have been reading through the Harry Potter books again, and I'm surprised how much I'm enjoying it. I think I've read it. This is like my third time reading through them, and I've enjoyed them in the past, but I'm just really enjoying it this time around for whatever reason. I don't know if it's the innocence of it all, and it reminds me of a better time when I was younger or what, but I don't know. I'm really enjoying it this time around, so I've been geeking out about that.
I'll never forget my sister and I fighting with our parents to be there for the premiere of the last novel and fighting with her over who got to read it first and how long we got to read it. I love those books so much. They're very near and dear to my heart. But as far as what I've been geeking out on, I had just watched Evil Dead Rise, which is a tremendous flick, a very worthy successor to the original Evil Dead movies. Now, I will caution, if you're like me and you're not very happy about blood and gore, which I knew it was coming in there because it's an Evil Dead movie, but like it's going to be there in spades. If you don't like those things, I would say to avoid. But as far as the film goes, excellent movie. I love it a lot.
Yeah, one of the best title reads I've seen in years.
Most definitely. All right, so let's get into our main topic of discussion today, which of course is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. Now, guys, who among you would like to explain what this is and how it is different from the first game?
So mechanically.
No, don't let me interrupt you. You go ahead. You go ahead and do it. I'm the guest here. I won't step over you.
You sure? We have a guest. I'm here all the time,
Well, the short version of it is, it's the second of the two KOTOR games that came out before the Old Republic, and it only had about a 14-month development time. And it's was handed off from BioWare to Odyssey, who has a knack for doing fairly good games in a short period of time. I mean, they also the ones who did Fallout New Vegas, which was hugely popular. And it improves narratively on the first game, I think, and it improves gameplay-wise on the first game. I think there's plenty of complaints to rage for it. But it follows a separate Jedi that takes place several years after the events of the first game, and we're following kind of the aftermath of Revan and kind of following the tale of a new Jedi set in this same time period. And it's a really cool story.
Yeah, I agree completely. Obsidian did a really good job with as little time as they had to make this game as good as possible, because we are dealing with the aftermath, like you said, of Knights of the Old Republic, where we defeated Darth Malak and stopped the Star Forge from producing all these ships, from taking over the Republic. And now we're a couple years later, and the Republic is still around, but the Sith are starting to come back, it seems. And I love how they set that up. TJ, anything you want to add to that?
To me, it's leagues better than the first one. That's not that popular of an opinion, but it definitely is. I
would second that completely. So
I think,
how are you guys introduced? Go ahead. No, go ahead, Adam.
I think one of the coolest things, and this is immediately jumping out at me, is because this was really one of the first games where you could continue the story from the previous game. Dragon Age hadn't come out yet, neither had Mass Effect. And so this idea of leading from one game to another, and they did it so masterfully with the conversation early on with Ayn Rand, where you kind of just go through the events of the last game and establish. I'm still so impressed by that conversation and how natural and non-awkward it felt, and how it does affect the rest of the game.
Yeah, those dialogue options at the very beginning were a very clever way of doing that, and I really respect that decision.
Yeah.
All right, so how were you guys introduced to the second game, and was it the first for any of us here?
It was the first one for me. It's actually like the first video game I have like lucid memories for, except for maybe Turok Evolution.
Oh, we just bonded.
Which was also good.
We just became best friends. I'm a huge fan of the Turok games. So,
yeah.
What about you, Adam?
It was because I remember I have very vivid memories of the first game coming out and everyone talking about it and everyone being excited. And for the life of me, I could not find a copy of it anywhere. It was so hard to track down at that point. So when the second game got announced, I immediately pre-ordered. It was the first game I ever pre-ordered. I was really excited about it. And I actually had not played the first game very much compared to when I got the second game. So the second game really was my introduction to the franchise. I think maybe I had beaten the first game once in like a dead mad race. Someone had let me borrow it or something. And so it was like a dead mad race through it. So I didn't really get to explore like I did with KOTOR 2. So, yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised. I played the first one first. I was around 13 when it released. And my dad had gotten it for me because, like me, he's a huge Star Wars nerd. And as a dumb 13-year-old, I bungled my way through my first playthrough of that. And then the sequel came out. It's like, of course, I want to do this again. It was so much fun the first time around. So as a slightly older dumb kid, I went through this and had the time of my life. I can't imagine going back to KOTOR at 1 after playing this first. But you know what? You guys did it.
Yeah. Well, it was different.
It was different. I mean, definitely. I don't think a second playthrough of KOTOR as meaningful as the second playthrough of KOTOR 2. Like, I feel like once the big reveal happens, you really only have 2 real playthroughs of KOTOR 2. Of KOTOR 1, you have the light side or the dark side playthrough. With KOTOR 2, there's a little bit more nuance. There's a little bit more to do. Trying to get better, stronger affiliations with your companions. Having those companions actually go with you on missions. The fact that you can change some of them into Jedis and how that changes your gameplay. That was enough that I ended up playing through it several more times than I've played through KOTOR 1.
Yeah, I play KOTOR 2 at least once a year, and I've played KOTOR 1. I think I've played it through maybe 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I'd say about the same for myself. There's a lot you can do in this game for the randomization, especially when you're able to do it on PC and get the restoration mod, and that changes things up immensely. I didn't know there were certain items in the game you couldn't have gotten if you weren't a certain level. It's mind-boggling, and thank God for that mine glitch where you can plant 15 mines in one area, move to the next area, plant 15 there, and move back and back. Even as a kid who had no patience at all, I did that so I could level up.
Yeah, I didn't start doing that until maybe a couple years ago. Until then, I was just enjoying the experience.
Well, I discovered it by mistake completely. And so, wait, I just leveled up from something. I accidentally placed this mine here, then moved to a new area and came back and I leveled up from doing that. I was like, wait, can I get more experience points from doing this? It's like, yeah, I can. And that's definitely a bug. It's not a design in the game, but yeah. So moving on from there, one of the things introduced by later word of God, and for those who know what that means, is like as someone from the development team or someone who created like the original author saying this is something that is in something that I made. And then later canon at that point would be making the Jedi Exile canonically female. Now, how do we feel about making a customizable character into a specific person? And have we played as a female exile?
I think it's fine, really. And yes, of course I did.
Yeah, you did. Adam?
Yeah.
I was actually in my first playthrough. I was going through this phase at the time where I was playing RPGs as a girl for whatever reason. So my first playthrough was a female guardian with double-bladed lightsabers. And I remember how immensely powerful and fun that was. and heavy armor and everything too. So I wouldn't have very many force powers, but I could fight him off with the best of them.
Yeah, I played male first, and then later on, when I learned the Jedi Exile was canonically female, I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." And so I went back and played as one. Because I want to play the canon version of the game. It's kind of like one of my gripes against the Elder Scrolls is just how murky things are with past protagonists. And I understand why they do that, because they want you to feel like your character was the character, and if they get specifics into it, that can't happen. But as far as KOTOR 2 is concerned, it's very rewarding and enriching playing on the female side of things. The only other thing I have against it is that you can't bring Handmaiden with you as a female exile. You get stuck with Disciple, Michael, he's okay, but it pales in comparison to Handmaiden Brianna. So yeah, I have no issue with this whatsoever. It makes perfect sense for why a female Jedi could be the main lead of something. I know there was a lot of outcry when it originally happened, and I just rolled my eyes and moved on with my life. What about you guys?
Yeah, I didn't really care much at all. I was like, that's cool. Disciple is lame, but that's cool.
Yeah, he was very confusing to me because he didn't make sense. And I understand why they made him a soldier class, because, they wanted him to parallel the Handmaiden really well, who was a soldier class. But it never made sense to me that he would be such a scholar and be such an intelligent person, and yet he would be a combat class. I really think he should have been a scout or a scoundrel and then gone into being a sentinel versus a guardian. So thematically, that always bothered me. He didn't make sense in his play style versus his characterization, and that always bothered me. So I never liked using him.
Yeah, well, Plato was a wrestler. And Diogenes.
And it's such thing as a genius bruiser. But I understand completely what you're saying, Adam. It's like I never leveled him up for anything. I never used him for anything if I didn't have to. I never brought him the Duxon later on or had him on Onderon or anything else. Like he was there. It's like I care a little bit about you, but not enough to put you on a team. Like you're on this council, but we don't give you the rank of master, essentially. That's how I felt about that. So I asked TJ and I this last time, but Adam, since you're here as well, let me ask, did you gravitate towards the light or the dark side in your playthroughs? And if so, why?
I think it just depended on the mood. The first time I played it, I did light side because that's usually my rule of thumb in moral choice games is to go on the good path first. But the irony is I have way more vivid memories of playing it through dark side, because my first dark side playthrough, that was the playthrough where I figured out that you can make your companions Jedis. So that became a really fun sub goal, and it's really easy as a dark side character. I had so much trouble doing any of it as a light side character, but as a dark side heavy force wielding character, it was so easy to influence my companions. So by the end, I had several of them were Jedis. And that was pretty cool to have just this group of dark force wielding Jedis, including Handmaiden, of course, became a dark force wielding Jedi.
Yes.
It's also easier. Like just in general, dark side is easier because it's cheaper to use Force Storm, which is just the best force power.
Oh, absolutely.
You just run in Force Storm. It does,
it didn't work the first time. Force Storm again. Do
it again. You've spent like 12 force points up to this point. Do it again. Now you've started to notice that your bar is going down. It was just too easy. But
yeah. Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah. I always played on light side. Light side or just the choice that I would make, which is light side. Just not super, super light side. But now I do try, if I decide to go one way or the other, I try to take it all the way to either extreme so I can go into the cave on Korriban.
Mm-hmm.
So it also makes your character stat screen look better.
Very true. Yeah, I think I shared this on the last episode we did, but I was not allowed to be on the dark side when I was a kid, which, I think that's just part of my parents saying like, hey, make these good moral choices because that's what you should be doing in life. And still to this day, I can't even think about doing some of those dark-sided actions. It just feels so... I know they're not real, but after spending so much time with all these characters, they feel real to me. So I just can't bear to see them hurt. So yeah, I still remain light side all the way. I know the dark side gets some really cool things, like one of the lightsaber crystals that you can get. It was pretty cool. Like Calaxia, whatever it is. Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, as well, one of the things, like the first game, we have a ton of really great companions to act as your core cast for this game. Like, is there one in particular that you guys were more drawn to than others?
I mean, for me, HK-47 is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars canon, period. I love his comments. I love his characterization. I love his voice actor. I meant to look up his voice actor. I just love everything about the character and how he plays. And I would look for any reason, whether I'm good or dark. I think one of my biggest contentions about KOTOR 2 is how much more difficult it is to get him and have him through the portion of the game. I think that's my biggest contention because he's sitting right there, and all I want to do is hear him refer to people as meatbag, and I can't, and that's really disappointing to me how tough it would be.
Yeah.
I think there was a couple playthroughs where I would actually, because I don't know if it's still the case, but I know that if you're a Nar Shaddaa, you could miss a piece. There are ways to miss a piece, and you could go the entire game without reactivating him. And that would happen to me on some playthroughs. I would forget to grab something, or I'd forget to take one of those crucial steps, and I would miss out on that playthrough, and I'd be really disappointed.
Yes.
Yeah. Bowder.
Really?
Bowder is always with me. Always.
Walk me through that.
He's just cool, man. What do you mean walk you through it? He's the coolest. It's got
I was going to ask another question as well. Okay. No, I respect it. It was hard to limit myself to this answer. HK-47 is a great answer as well, but I chose Mira for mine. I love her introduction as this bounty hunter with a heart of gold who is like, hey, like, idiot, you really don't know what you're doing here. Like, you don't understand how to play this game. You just kind of bungled your way into starting a war between the bounty hunters over you. And then finding out later on that you can turn her into a Jedi. You can have this really gruff person who doesn't want to get close to people, and then find that there's, like I said, a heart of gold in there that actually wants to help others and inspire others, and turning into a Jedi. I love that so much. Her rivalry with Hanhar has always been a lot of fun. I've never had Hanhar as a companion, obviously, because you have to be dark-sided for that. But I love Mira. I love, like I said before, I love Handmaiden too, for her journey of breaking out from her family, being this outcast, even though she looks identical to her sisters. she because of how Echani work, she had a different mother, right? Or a different father. I'd have to really look it up. One of the two. And because of that, even though she looks identical, they can still tell the differences. We can't. And her journey to become a Jedi as well. Of course, my boy Canderous is there. Can never get mad about him. Let's see, T3 is just reliable to have. Mm-hmm. Physis is okay. So do we have our least favorite companion besides Michael?
Hanhar.
Okay. What about Hanhar?
Me. Mira was just such a better option, and you could only get one of the two depending on your affiliation. So every dark side playthrough, I end up with Hanhar, and I'm like, wow, that's super useful. And then he's never in my party again.
How about you, Adam?
The I can't remember his name. It's completely eluding me. The droid,
Goto.
T3 and 4? Goto.
Yeah. Not the droid, the flying medical.
Yeah, Goto.
The words just flew at my brain. They're just gone. The black medical ball. That
yes.
was a companion that I was like, I already have two other droids. Why would I bring this floating ball with me?
That's perfectly fair. And I forgot to mention, how could I forget Kreia, as like favorite characters here? She's not my favorite, but I really love her, despite sometimes being like, I really want to strangle you, old woman. But like, I completely get where you're coming from too. But as far as least favorites go, I got to disappoint you, TJ. Beodur is on that list.
Yeah, he would be on mine too.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's that whole thing. You break the shield with his arm. That's pretty fun as a gameplay mechanic. I really enjoy the history he has with the Jedi Exile, and that brings more depth to him, in my opinion. But as far as the gameplay goes, he's almost never in my party. I don't even think I send him to Duxon at certain parts of the game when you can do that. I still turn him into a Jedi because more Jedi is better, but that'd be about it for him, in my opinion.
He's a really, really good Jedi Sentinel.
Go ahead, Adam.
Well, when I played him, the only way you could effectively get him, when I played it, It's been a minute. It's been a minute. I actually started downloading it last night. I'm like, I should play through that again. It's been a while. When I played it, you pretty much could only get him to be a Jedi if he was your only companion for huge portions of the game. And so that was kind of a turnoff for me to deal with him, because I'm like, I want to be able to, I like the whole concept, the whole companion concept. And I like this. It always makes more sense to me that you would have these adventures with multiple people. So it was always, I was always dissuaded from using him, because to get him to be a Jedi, at least at that time in the game's history, you would basically have to run him by yourself. Yeah, I didn't like that.
Yeah, as far as that companion affinity system is, like, it's very early in gaming having something like that. Like you mentioned Dragon Age and Mass Effect later on. It's like they would build off of what was being created here. And I really like that. Although, of course, every time you have a conversation with Freya, like you get that message almost every single time you have a conversation with Freya. It's influence gain, influence lost, dark side points gain, light side points gain. Yes, go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, it's a really cool system that started, like the first game I remember doing that was Baldur's Gate, which was actually a BioWare game as well. So it was really, it was really cool to see that. And this is all based off of D&D engines. So KOTOR 1 and 2 are based, I think it's like not third edition, like second edition or something like that.
3.5.
Yeah, something like that. So it's all based off of that D&D engine, and it makes sense that they would have companions be such a huge part of it, because it is based off D&D, which is made to be played with other people.
Yeah, the games got exponentially easier for me when I realized that, because I was just looking through the action log one day, and if you ever look at it, it'll tell you like what you rolled for things, and I was like, oh, interesting. And then suddenly all of the numbers in the game made sense. I was like, oh, critical range. It's, if I get between 18 and 20, I get a critical hit. It was a game changer.
Yeah, it took an embarrassingly long amount of time before I figured out how that system worked. I'm talking like in my 20s.
Yeah, but it also, when it was time for me to start playing D&D, it made that easier too.
Yeah, I wish I'd done what you did and look at the action log, because that would have made D&D a lot easier when I started doing that too.
Yeah. So if you're looking to get into D&D, possibly play with us, play Knights of the Old Republic too.
Oh, yes. All right, so we've talked about our companions. And what about other NPCs? Is there anyone that we kind of gravitated towards as well? And I know there's a large cast. It could be someone who shows up for one scene. If you don't have an answer, that's okay. There's a lot to pare down.
What's his name? It starts with an M. The Authorian from Telos that runs.
There's Chodo Habat.
Yeah, Chodo Habat. Yeah. I've always loved Chodo Habat. The way he talks, I make that sound all the time. All the time. I don't know why. It's just so funny to me.
You need more time to think, Adam? I can tell mine.
No one sticks out other than the one lady, the handmaiden's mother. I thought that was such a cool interaction between the two characters, and it's such a cool, well-written scene where you're like, your choices unfold this narrative of your character's backstory, and the way that that's playing out in front of you, I always thought was really, really cool. So I think she was probably one of my favorites. I can't tell you how much time I spent replaying that conversation, trying to get my lightsaber from her. It never worked out.
Yeah, Atris is a really great NPC in this game, a very great character of showing how easy it is to fall to darkness without realizing it. Like that line Kreia gives her, I'm going to butcher it if I say it, but it's that gist of what I said earlier. It's like you get on this path and you think you're in the right, but you've just been in darkness for so long. And she surrounded herself with that. And to see her move. And actually, there's some hints in the game that Kreia may actually be the mother of Handmaiden in her past life. Kreia isn't obviously her name. She may be someone they mentioned called Aaron K. So that could be something. Like, it's not confirmed. I think Avalon, one of the developers, said, that is a cool idea. I didn't intend it, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love Atris a lot. Mine actually is a guy you meet for one scene. And it's when you're on Dantooine, you're going to the cave to rescue Vrook, right? Lamar, the one always obstinate Jedi who's always got to be in your face about stuff. And you meet this Twi'lek who's just roaming around. And his name is Arnell. And in conversation with him, you find out he's force sensitive. And like you have this moment of you can rat him out. You can take his pheromone that he has that's preventing him from being killed by the Kenrath in there. Or you can like say, I'm going to keep your secret. I just found him so fascinating, this guy who's working with these people while he has this own, if they ever found out, he would be taken too.
Yeah, no, he was cool. He died a lot for me.
Really? Yeah, I think that's a common bug. That somehow like it doesn't work like it's supposed to in game, and like the Kenrath will start trying to kill him.
Yeah. Pretty sure I figured it out, but I remember it used to. He just died like every time.
All right. So one of the best parts of any Jedi game is obviously going to be using your lightsaber. Like, do we have any specific loadouts we use, like lightsaber crystals? How do we customize them? Like armor as well, like or robes?
I always try to use like the character crystal,
Yes.
the one that's named after you. And I really like orange and silver, so I'll usually pick up 2 lightsabers and go orange and silver, and build on crit chance. I can't remember what the crystals are called ever, but you know,
Yeah, I had to
I
look
like a
up a
high
couple of
crit
mine.
build.
That's a good one.
Just expand that range, put on the focusing lens.
Almost definitely.
Yeah.
How about you go robes or armor?
I usually go robes. By the end of the game, like I'm not role playing anything. I'm just gonna walk in, force storm a bunch of times, swing the lightsabers if I'm feeling frisky. I don't really get hit a lot by the end of the game. So
Fair enough, Adam.
Well, when I first played it, I played it through as a Guardian with double-bladed lightsabers, like I mentioned. And I did armor. I did not know that force. I didn't know about force jump, so I did not realize that it didn't take effect if you were wearing armor.
Gotcha.
So I didn't actually learn about that ability till after I had beaten both KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2 as Guardians with armor. And someone showed me later on. I'm like, oh, I was missing out on that. So from that point on, I pretty much used robes, whether I was a Guardian or a Sentinel. No, not a Sentinel. Which was the one? Because I'm having a brain fog. So there's Guardian, and then there's Council, and then Sentinel. Sentinel is the pure force, right?
Consular.
I can't remember.
Pure force.
Consular. So I would usually build a character based off of either the Guardian or the Counselor. Because I really liked, even as a light side, I liked the pure force build because they actually didn't need a lightsaber at all. Their melee, for whatever reason, their hand-to-hand melee profile was pretty beastly on their own. And you would still have some pretty cool force powers that would not damage dealing. So most of my playthroughs were one of the two. I didn't do dual wielding lightsabers in the second game because that was such a huge staple of my first playthrough of KOTOR 1. Was my first Revan actually did the double bladed lightsabers, the dual wielding lightsabers. So I had always had an issue doing it in the second game. If I did do it in the second game, it was the regular lightsaber and then the short lightsaber would be the combination. So.
Yeah, DJ, I forgot to ask, did you go Sentinel, Consular, like Watchman, Weapon Master?
I would go Consular.
So I went normally Sentinel and Watchman, not for any mechanic reasons for the Watchman part, but for the Sentinel, I'm fairly certain they're the ones that get the most skill points. And I'm a skill monkey by nature. So I want to put the most as much as I can into a certain stat. That's why even though I know it was detrimental, I always increased my intelligence above any other stat in the game. There's so many better options than doing what I do, but it's to have fun. So as far as lightsabers are concerned, I always did my own crystal as well, named after your character, like TJ said. Then I would pair that normally with the Solari crystal, which is the light-sided option you get, because there's a dark-sided crystal and a light-sided crystal that are specific to those. If you are dark-sided, you cannot take this, and vice versa. Then for the next one, I would normally take, I think it's Ankari's Sapphire, and then the kyber crystal, and combined them for my second lightsaber. I did 2 lightsabers of the same size and bonded them together. I don't really think about the lenses and all that. Whatever was the best one to do more damage, probably. Now, as far as armor, I always went with like the Jal Shea or the Zayton Shah armors, which were armors made so you could cast the Force in armor, as opposed to other versions, which you can't do it because of gameplay mechanics. Because that way it just felt kind of cool to be in armor and then like force storming people, even though I'm on the light side, because I think you can do that. We talked about Grey Jedi in the last game we discussed. But yeah, that's how I decked out.
Yeah, those are awesome. I did almost always put on the rebreather and keep it on for the whole playthrough.
Well, you never know when you might end up in the Jek Tar again.
Yeah, just in case. But yeah, it was just called Sith Master, or Jedi Master and Sith Lord.
Gotcha. Yeah, because there's Assassin and something else on the Sith side. Yeah, I know them very little because Marauder. I never did it. Marauder, thank you. That was the Watchmen. Oh, the reason I picked Watchmen is because when I learned like there are Jedi assigned to a certain sector of space and their job is to find Force-sensitive people. That sounds like so much fun. That's exactly what I would want to do. And so like, I don't know if it pairs up well mechanically. I'd have to look things up, but I always went Sentinel and then Watchmen because it just sounded cool to me.
Yeah. If I wasn't playing a Jedi Master, if I am going to be a Sith, I'm going to be a Sith assassin.
Oh, yeah. All right. So like the last game, we have plenty of planets that we got to explore in KOTOR 2. Like, you guys have a favorite one to go to, and we'll talk about least favorites after that.
I love going to Nar Shaddaa. To me, it's like one of the most fun parts of the game.
Oh, there's so much you can do there.
There's so much.
I mean, you can just bungle around, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to find Zez Kael, I think is the Jedi Master there. Like finding it's not the Syndicate, it's the Exchange. I'm thinking of Cowboy Bebop. Yeah, the Exchange. So much fun.
Yeah, it's so good.
And if you read, yeah, I've never done this, but I've seen video of people doing it. That one time you get attacked by thugs and you have that dark sided option of Force persuading them to jump down to their deaths. It's like, man, I'm never going to do this, but that temptation always appears whenever the option is shown.
Yeah, no, I definitely have done that. It's like,
I've done it.
In the hole. And they're asking for it. You're going to start a fight with me right here? You're going to yell at me? I'm just trying to enjoy a nice walk around the city.
And you can also find that one merchant there who sells the HK pacifist program to install and like wreck his world for a little bit. It's has some of the funniest dialogue in Star Wars total, in video games as a total. All right, we'll get to least favorites later. Adam, what about your favorite planet?
I always liked Korriban, believe it or not. I like the narrative layout of it because you go through that back cave and you unlocking so much of the backstory of your character and even the backstory of Revan, which I think is really interesting because I do have a fondness for Revan as a character. So that was fun for me. I think that would probably be my favorite planet just because of the story aspect of it and what it unlocks as as the story unfolds.
Well, it makes perfect sense too why it's abandoned and lifeless after the Sith Academy is no longer there as far as students and teachers because the Republic has won and they've beaten the Sith back, and all that's left behind are the dead and the Force ghosts around them, and of course those giant crocodile reptiles that there's totally an exploit you can use in one chamber to touch a corpse when you're told by Kreia not to do, and they'll reappear over and over again, which gives you infinite XP. I never used that. Why would I be talking about that?
I did do that one a few times.
I think it's such a cool, interesting narrative structure too, because whether you were a good Revan or a bad Revan, to see how it didn't change anything between the two games is actually a really cool narrative structure. And it's kind of a fun, interesting conversation of futility almost. Because whether you're a good Revan or a bad Revan, you still find everything the way it is. And that's kind of interesting to me. And I liked it. I didn't think it was a bad way to go. And I think they did a good job in conversation justifying it through, a lot of it was done through Kreia and the conversation with Atten, so that was really cool to me.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point to make, because one person can only do so much. It's like, yeah, you're the hero, but crime's still going to happen on this world. Like people's lives are still going to get lost here because Revan has to leave. We find out later on in the game to do other things to try and find the true Sith. But as far as Korriban is concerned, I also really love truly our first confrontation with Darth Sion, like lightsaber to lightsaber, if I remember correctly. And then finding out, man, no matter how many times I put this guy down, he keeps coming back up. That's terrifying. That's disturbing. After he's been chasing you this whole game. That's a really great moment there. Now, as far as I'm concerned, favorite planet, it's not Dantooine. It's not Telos. It's definitely not Malachor 5.
Hater.
I may give it to Onderon and Duxon. I know that's a slog for some people going through them, but I love, because it brings up earlier lore established in the comics that these games were based off of the Mandalorians and the confrontation on Onderon and how the Sith had a presence there back in the day. As you later return there with some of your companions, they're actually fighting in your stead on your behalf over there on Duxon while you're attacking on Onderon. And then the conflict there of between the Civil War. And I love Klavar a lot. He's one of my favorite NPCs too. Unfortunately, he goes the path of the other Jedi Masters in the game, and they fall back on old instincts and try and take you away from the Force. But that's another thing. But I love my Mandalorians. I love my Jedi Sith conflict, and you get both on Duxon and Onderon. Now, how about least favorites?
I don't know if I really have a least favorite.
That's fair. Okay, go for it.
Talos. I hate it, man. Talos. Such a drag. 4. You just the running back and forth, and I mean, you've already been through the mines. I can't for the life of me. I can't remember. Yeah, not. What was the name of the beginning? What?
Paragus.
Yeah, you've already been to Paragus, which was a slog in itself. A lot of running back and forth. I like the narrative structure of Paragus, but then you have this one more step before you feel like one more gate before the game opens up, and that always really bothers me. You get there and immediately you get captured. Then you're sitting in a jail cell, and then you wait in the jail cell for a little bit. Someone comes in. Then you get sent to another room after you fight that guy off. And you have to wait 2 more times as 2 more people come in and talk to you. And then you have to either do the exchange side quest or you have to help the citizens of the planet side quest. And it really is just a slog for me. And usually if I'm going to bail out of a playthrough, that's what happens is in Talos. It's like, what I mean?
That is totally fair.
The ringtone on the console in the room you're placed in house arrest is my actual ringtone.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
I like it. Yeah, Telos 4 can be, it's a slog because it's still early game. You don't have as many Jedi powers yet. You still don't have a lightsaber. And I'm glad none of us said Paragus, even though it's probably our true answer along the way. It's like how many times we have to replay that scene. Yeah, Telos 4, as far once again as lore is concerned, I really love everything that's going on there of it being Carth Onasi's original planet and him wanting to defend it. And then you see the different biospheres they're trying to create, the Zerka doing their shifty things on this end, and the Ithorians trying to actually save this planet and not just market the heck out of it. I love all of that too. But as far as least favorites are concerned, and I know some people are going to be upset, but Malachor 5 is one of my least favorites because it's very indicative. We talked earlier, Adam, you brought up how this game was rushed. And this is that part of the game where I really see it. Once again, this is a lifeless world. There's very few things there besides storm beasts. But part of this is a personal irk in that I didn't find all the storm beasts the first time I played through. And then you have to play as remote. Beodur's remote, and then you get destroyed because you're a level 1 remote versus these storm beasts. And of course, you're not going to win. And it's hard to lock out of the fight to actually do what you're there to do because you're 13 or 14 and dumb and you don't know what's going on. So there's some personal bias there, I'll just say.
Yeah. You didn't level up remote in your playthrough?
If only.
If only.
Go ahead.
I think my favorite part about Malachor 5 is when you're fighting through the temple after Kreia and you're just fighting all these dark acolytes as you go. That was always a fun fight for me. Just the endless waves.
Yeah, a nice callback to the Starforge as well. Like you're going through all these Sith acolytes trying to kill you, and then you keep going and going, and like nothing is stopping you because at this point in the game, you are the unstoppable force, and nothing is going to get in your way. I love it so much. All right. So, in contrast to the last game, we are not revealed to be some brainwashed Sith Lord who used to be in charge of everything. Instead, as we establish more lore of what happened with the Mandalorian War, we were one of many renegade Jedi who left the Order and tried to put a stop to the Mandalorian War because we wanted to save lives, and the Jedi were refusing to do anything. And we specifically gave the orders to destroy Malachor 5 because of the Mandalorian presence there, which actually ended the war. We then willingly came back as opposed to everyone else to be judged by the Jedi Order for what happened there. Like, how do we feel about how this game portrays the desire to seek repentance? And what are our thoughts about how the Exile's characterization is handled?
Well, it's all up to you, really.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to me. I wrote it. I did a great job.
Fair enough.
I mean, I liked it. Being as someone who I like to play, I come from an acting background and characterization background, so it's really fun for me to RP these characters and having that same character, go through the story different ways, starting off on the footing of, they came back as a bad Jedi, or they came back as a Sith or a dark Jedi, or they came back as a broken, repentful Jedi. Either story is really compelling and really interesting as it goes through the story. I mean, I've had playthroughs where I came back as a dark Jedi with a red lightsaber, but yet then played through the rest of the game as a light side character. And even though the changes are subtle, it does make for a compelling narrative, even through the fourth or the fifth playthrough. So that was always fun for me.
I really appreciate that. Where do we learn this? Do we get the footage? We get the footage on Telos 4 after we leave Atris's place, right? Yeah. And we see the trial that we had. We give the option of seeing it. Because I think there's some people who've never seen this before that played the game, if I remember correctly. You have the option to not watch it. Yeah. And you see, like, out of all the Jedi that went to war, you're the only one who came back. And that's because if you look into KOTOR 1 and other stuff, like, that's because they all fell to the dark side and joined up with Revan to fight against the Republic. What is it about me that, unlike everyone else, I resisted that call? And part of it is what we'll get to in a second, is that wounded the force kind of thing is kind of affecting us. But it's also, what about me as a person? Why did I reject that fall? Why did I come back, even though I knew I was doing the right thing to save these people from destruction, from the Mandalorian threat? Why did I come back?
Yeah, well, I think the Exile just had a really nice apartment on Coruscant.
It's like, just sign a 6-month lease and like just can't get rid of that responsibility.
Yeah, their galactic credit score would go down.
Oh, absolutely, especially after disappearing for so long.
Yeah,
I know for me for playing it as a light side, my logic would be, the character came back because just as much as they disobeyed the Jedi Order because they thought they were doing the right thing, they also know the rules of the Jedi, so they would come back because that would be the rules. Facing responsibility for their choices was part of my characterization when playing it through as a light side.
I think there's that really great scene when you finally reunite all the Jedi Masters and they're trying to remove you from your ability to harness the Force. And Kreia comes in, wipes the floor with them, and says, "You fools have learned nothing." The Exile came back here because she is really the only Jedi left as far as Kreia is concerned. And obviously Bastila is still out there, as we find in the game. But like, unlike the rest of you, she fought to protect people, then came back to face judgment for breaking the rules, to like make amends for what happened. And like, you have learned nothing from her example, and that's why I'm murdering you right now, because oh no surprise, Kreia was a Sith the whole time. Who could have imagined that with the way she talked?
That was subtle.
And like, I don't even care that it wasn't subtle, because I love her a lot. This cranky old woman who's probably going to be me when I get to be that age. It's like, can't you idiots just do what I tell you to do? We'll get to her in a moment. But what we find is one of the reasons why they're so afraid of us is because as a result of our actions in destroying Malachor 5 with the Shadow Pulse Generator or whatever it is Beodur creates, we give the order that happens. And as a result of that happening, all the Mandalorians dying, all the Jedi dying on that planet, and the Republic soldiers, we are now a wound in the Force. And that has caused us to cause our companions to follow us without even thinking about what they would normally do, without questioning some of the orders that we give. And what are our thoughts about this development? And how does it help differentiate the Exile from Revan?
I think it's a really, really good gameplay mechanic.
Yeah.
Like an actual reason why they just listen to you. But it's really interesting because it makes the Exile and Revan a really compelling parallel. Really, you've got the same thing going on for very different reasons.
Yeah, Revan's just that persuasive and a great leader. You are because you're affecting these people's minds and causing them to deny aspects they would normally like talk out against. That's dark. Even if you're a light-sided Jedi in this game playthrough, that's dark. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, I was just thinking, I just want to agree with a lot of the things you're saying. It creates for such an interesting parallel because Revan is charismatic. No matter what you play for, he's a charismatic character. And to have this kind of like other character, and it's so fun how the Exile parallels the other Sith Lords almost. You know what I mean? You know, I'm thinking of his name's Nihilus, right? Darth Nihilus or something like that. How he's kind of this open wound and void as well. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like an interesting narrative parallel that no matter what character you build, they really are reflections of these Sith Lords that you're fighting against.
Most definitely. Like the Triumvirate is some of the best villains we've ever had in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
For very different reasons. Like not the fact that these people ever got along at some point in time astounds me because they are so different from one another. You got Scion, whose existence is literally pain. He cannot die. He's just that angry, that mad. And you have Nihilus, who is so out of touch with life that he seeks to destroy life in order to try and find a way to control it and get back to who he used to be. Or is he just that far gone? We don't know because all he does is blah, 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 all the time. And apparently Vices can understand him. So that's good for her. But we're left in the dark. And then you get to Darth Traya / Kreia, who in my opinion is one of the best written characters in Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
And her whole deal of like destroying the Force. As someone who wields the Force, why would you ever do that? Because she sees the endless wars that are going to happen as a result of Jedi wanting to protect and Sith and Dark Jedi wanting to control.
Yeah. And, you know, she's so on about that she thinks there should always be somebody trying to fulfill their role. There should always be a Darth Traya. Which I have to agree make every trilogy better.
It's the subtle brilliance, whether you think George Lucas was accidentally brilliant or if he was intentionally brilliant, it's the subtle brilliance of what he established in the original episodes 6, 7, and 4, 5, and 6. Is you have this universe where history can constantly repeat itself and these things can constantly repeat itself and still have new and interesting adventures in that formula. I mean, I remember hearing one interview. He's like, you know, the stories of episode 1, 2, and 3 and 4, 5, and 6, they rhyme, but they're different. And you even see that here. The writers of KOTOR, even KOTOR 1 and 2, understood that and were able to craft these narratives that really reflected that kind of, this has happened once before, this is going to happen again. And that's what's so fascinating. And that's what really makes this a fantasy universe as much as a sci-fi universe, is it is very mythological in scale. And then you have these almost poetic repeats in history that you can play in.
Yeah, one of the things, I agree completely with what you're saying, that Chris Avallone, Avallone, how the heck you pronounce his name, one of the head writers for KOTOR 2, said is that he wanted to deconstruct the elements of Star Wars. And that's why he watched and read everything that had ever been made. I'm talking like source books for RPGs that discontinued after 1 year of use. I'm talking the Ewoks cartoons. I'm talking the dreaded holiday special. He watched and read all of it to understand what is Star Wars and how do I deconstruct this, while I believe at the same time reconstructing what makes Star Wars so great. Now, this gets into the question I was going to ask, and here we go for the controversy here. I got to bring it because of who I am. Many people have drawn parallels between this game and The Last Jedi for being willing to deconstruct the tropes and ideals of Star Wars. As the number one sequel hater myself on this show, I get what they're trying to say. I understand what they're trying to say, but I highly believe that this game did it so much better and with more purpose in mind. So what does it say? What does it say? Have to say about the Jedi, the Sith, and the Force? And is there a fair comparison to be made between this and The Last Jedi?
I think the difference is when you have, because I do agree with the parallels, but I think the difference is in the approach of how they looked at Revan and how they looked at Luke. Because Revan really is a parallel to Luke in the sense that if you go chronologically, if you follow the official canon, you have this dark side Jedi that gets redeemed, much like how Luke would hope Anakin would get redeemed. That goes on to save the galaxy, much like Luke went on to save the galaxy. I do see that parallel, but what I'm trying to say is they handled Luke so poorly in The Last Jedi versus KOTOR 2. They understood the reverence of Revan, and they understood that whether he was a light side or dark side character, he has this huge impact on this time and this place, and they constructed the game around that. And so I think not actively trying to demean your previous character or demean Revan as a character really helps to make it so this game can exist on its own and be criticized differently from its previous game. If that makes any sense at all, if I'm not rambling like a crazy person.
I'm with you 100%. TJ.
So I don't think it's outlandish to say that. I do think we give a lot of credit because KOTOR 2 came out before Revenge of the Sith even. So
yes,
some of
around the same time.
Oh yeah, I think it was right after. But it was
05, so it might have been right after. You're right, because it was
Christmas.
It was
right after.
Yeah.
But it was still in development, before the movie came out. So a lot of the Star Wars tropes weren't even really tropes yet. I think it helped solidify some of those being the norm, but it's just so much more. It's executed so much better, in my opinion, and being able to play it out. I do. The Last Jedi is okay. It's not as good as Knights of the Old Republic 2.
Of course. Yeah, well, I know, TJ, you're positive on a sequel trilogy than I am overall. I think what you said, Adam, about the reverence, that's a really good word to use for how this is being handled. Because at the end of the day, Chris Avellone became more of a Star Wars fan when he was writing this, even though he has issues with how the story is created, with the mythos and everything behind it, the light and the dark side. And Kreia is pretty much his character speaking in the game. If Kreia says something, chances are he believes that. But he still leaves hope in the game, because one of the biggest themes of Star Wars, that's why the first film is called A New Hope, because it's introducing in a time where it seems like there's none, we're going to give you something to hope in. And The Last Jedi, after that film is over, I feel no hope. And this is not a Last Jedi bashing session. I'm sorry. It's just who I am. I have to bring it up. I mean,
have I missed that one? I have things to say on the matter.
You can join the winning team on that one, but we're almost at an hour here. So for the sake of brevity, I will say, like I said, I understand the parallels because both are attempting a deconstruction, but that reverence thing you brought up, Adam, I don't think Rian Johnson has the same reverence to Star Wars that Avellone did. Now, I think he still likes Star Wars. I think he's a really great director because I rather enjoy Knives Out. I think it's a tremendous film. I have not seen Glass Onion yet. I need to watch that. But when it comes to Star Wars, I felt no care for the franchise he was working in. Now, other people are going to say completely different things on that matter, and we can agree to disagree. There's a reason I rate the film a -1 out of 10. All right, TJ, as the more positive member of this chat, I will give you the last word on this subject before we move to our next question.
I still don't think the sequel trilogy is that good.
And that's the most positive thing we have to say. So if you like the sequel trilogies, once again, I am not a hater of you. I'm not a hater of the actors. Sometimes I'm not a hater of the writers involved. It helps when you actually have writers who care. But like, you can have your opinion. I still want to love on you and respect you for your opinions. Like, I still talk to Joshua somehow, and I don't know how that works, but I love him. I think it's Jesus. That has to be the end of that.
I will admit, though, not to get it off the top, I did like episode 7. I thought it was a good start. I just didn't take a good next step. You know, it was disappointing in that way.
All right. So TJ mentioned Korriban and a vision we can have there earlier. We're offered this vision where we have the opportunity to attack Kreia because, surprise, she's a Sith. And one of the options we're given is that we can say, look, this doesn't matter. Like, you're just a Force vision. I'm not going to do anything. And a phrase is repeated several times over, and that is apathy is death. Like, what do we feel about this statement?
I think she's spitting. If you can't feel anything, then what's the point?
Adam?
I think she was predicting the outcome. I think she was predicting the end of Star Wars. I think it was a cool scene. I'm trying to think back because, you know, different things slightly happen depending on what your playthrough is. But yeah, I think there's some truth in that. I think, you know, even in a spiritual sense, we as believers, we can't just, you know, we trust in the Lord we trust in the Lord to be in control, and we trust in the Lord to have everything in his plan. But there is a call to action, there is a biblical call to action for us to do things, for us to take part in this world, even though we're not of this world, we take part in it. And I think there's some really valid wisdom in this concept of apathy is death. And it's a good reminder spiritually that we need to be active participants in this world and in our faith and in our relationship with God and others.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Just with more words, as per usual. And that's why we love TJ. Yeah, I completely agree with the both of you, no matter how laconic you were with your response. Like, we are called to be ambassadors to this world. We are called to look after the widow, the orphan, the sojourner, what have you, because guess what? No one else is going to look after them correctly. There may be people in this world who will see their need, and out of that sense that God puts in all of our hearts, desire to see them better, but they're not going to do it in the right fashion. And God doesn't say, hey, look, hey, don't worry about the widow and the orphan and so on and so forth, because I'm going to do everything for you. Like, no, we are in a broken world. And as part of that, God will still intervene when he chooses to, but he's going to give us the opportunity to do the work that is going to bring glory to him because he put us there to do it. And that whole idea of apathy is death, there's no better way to put that. If you stop caring about the world, nothing is going to change. Now, what does that mean for you? It could be something completely different from me. It could mean you get more active politically. It could mean that you start organizing a soup kitchen. I don't know. All I know is what God has called me to do. I don't know what he's called you to do. And that's something between you and him. And there's going to be something. We are not called here to be static Christians. You had something you want to say, Adam?
It starts with a prayer. It starts with praying to not be apathetic. I think Brandon Heath put it best in his song, Give Me Your Eyes. The whole chorus is him praying to understand God more completely so he can understand what his part in this world is. You know, and I'm not going to pull up the lyrics right now because then I'll get super teary-eyed when I do preaching, and anytime I have to preach from a lyric, I usually end up getting really super teary-eyed. So I'm not going to do that to you now. But the whole concept of it starts with, you know, if anything, if you don't know what to do or don't know where to go, the first thing we should do is pray about it. And the first thing we should say is things like, God, give me your eyes so I can see, give me your heart so I can feel, give me the people, let me see these people you need me to see, dear Lord, and then give me the strength to do what you need me to do. And I think it starts with there.
Well said. All right. I know I could easily talk about this for another 2 hours, but we don't all have that time in our lives. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to discuss before we wrap things up?
I think Aden is a better character than Han Solo.
Oh, yeah. We barely mentioned Atten, and he is one of my favorites, too. But better than Han Solo? Oof. Go ahead, Adam.
I hate Bazak. I never played.
I love
never
Bazak.
tried to play Bazak. I hate it. I think it's a silly melee game. I never did it in either of the two games. No, I hate it.
The swoop racing and Bazak, I'm glad they're optional. Go ahead, TJ.
No, I love fictional card games, and Bazak isn't that bad once you learn it. I've tried to play Bazak with real cards before.
It's kind of like Caravan and New Vegas for me.
I also love Caravan.
I've only played it 30 times total, so I could get that trophy in New Vegas. And it was an achievement. I was playing Xbox then. That's it. I still don't know the rules. When it's brought up as an option, I go, yeah, whatever. I'll play blackjack. I know how to play blackjack.
Caravan's easy. It's basically like you're playing blackjack against the dealer in 3 separate stacks at the same time, and the target's different.
I'm glad you understand it. All right.
So it's almost like a completely different game.
Almost, but not really.
PG and I have already mentioned our scores, but we'll say them again. Adam, how would you rate and review Knights of the Old Republic 2 as a whole?
Oh man, that is a good one. I would probably give it an 8 out of 10. I definitely have some criticisms about the game. I hate that it takes so long to get the lightsaber, and I hate that you pretty much have to go to Korriban or Dantooine to get it. So I feel like it's always making that choice for me that I have to go to one of them to be able to get the pieces for the lightsaber the fastest. And then I mentioned it earlier, the doing Talos right after Progress. I'm getting the names all wrong. Doing that mission right after the one is really grating. So that's why I would probably give it an 8 over a 9. It's just because those two things they're really major turnoffs for me when I think about playing through again. And they have talked me out of playing it through again because I'm like, I don't really want to deal with either of those aspects right now. So I give it about an 8 out of 10.
Okay, TJ.
10.
Good, because I was about to cut your eye out with a spoon if you dared give me a 9.5. Yeah, I agree with TJ completely. This game has flaws. We've mentioned them. Not all that we agree on, but there are flaws in this game. It was rushed. It's not their fault it was rushed, but there's something that could have been done better. Guys who are going to play on PC, play with the restored content mod. It's definitely well worth your time. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. This is my favorite piece of Star Wars fiction that isn't what's going to be in my recommendation, which, speaking of, does anyone have a recommendation for the audience to check out?
In like the Star Wars books?
It could be related to this or just in general. Like, hey, I want you to watch this. I want you to see this. I want you to read this.
Everyone should read the Darth Bane trilogy,
which TJ and I will be discussing later on. Also, we'll be discussing the Old Republic as well. I will take the back burner on that one because I have not played. I have watched a couple of videos, but TJ will be in charge of that masterpiece.
Yeah.
The Old Republic video game? I love that game.
So we may have him again for that one.
You can. I've never been it, but I've played through a huge portion of it with all the characters. I highly recommend the book, the Revan, the book. I mean, I think the only negative thing about the book Revan is it really does kind of like lock you into the way you view the characters because it is the canon version of the Revan and the Exile. But it is kind of fun to see what their lives were like after the game. So if you really like the two KOTOR books, I highly recommend the Revan book. I think it's a good kind of like, and it's a good connection between the Old Republic and the original KOTOR games. So,
all right. As for me, I'm going to do something stupid and recommend the book that's halfway through an entire set of novels, and that is Traitor by Matthew Stover in the New Jedi Order series. It is, without a doubt, no hyperbole, one of the books that changed my life and how I looked at things philosophically and how I looked at how the Force is handled within Star Wars itself. Obviously, you're going to need a lot of context to get there, so I do recommend the New Jedi Order as well. There's some parts I really like, there's some parts I really don't. But to get to Traitor, I'd say it's all worth it. So that's my recommendation. That's our recommendations for all of you. Guys, thank you again for listening today. Please head out to our website at systematicecology.org. You can go there to look at all of our hosts, look at all of our guests as well, to see which episodes we've been on. And as well, you can also suggest future episode topics for us to pick. We also would really like you to go to our Discord, join there, go to our YouTube page, check out the videos we're producing, and join our Patreon, where you can find not only a couple of other people, but more importantly, you can find Drinks with Tejas, where TJ interviews people to ask them about their drinking preferences. You can also find Manga Mustard and Comic Book Ketchup, where we talk about the manga and the comics we're reading. And also, if you would really like to help fund our ventures to go to Comic-Cons and meet you all in person and to help with the maintenance of the website and the payment for all that, please join our Patreon, even if it's only for $1. That's all you need to give, if you're capable of doing so. If not, never stretch yourself. We're very grateful for those on our Patreon and the people helping out. So at the end of this, remember, we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network.